Before we begin, if you believe that blood isn't the only thing that makes a family, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. What you're about to hear will stay with you forever. What would you do if someone told you that you don't belong? What would you do if the people who were supposed to love you turned their backs, denied your existence, and tried to erase you from history? Would you accept it? Would you walk away? Or would you fight for the truth, even if that truth could destroy everything? Tonight's story is about Elena Martinez, a young woman who grew up believing she was an orphan, only to discover that her real family was one of the wealthiest in America, a family that didn't want her, a family that would do anything to keep her hidden. It's about Harold Blackwood, a dying billionaire with a secret that had haunted him for 30 years. A secret about a daughter he had abandoned, a secret that was about to come back with devastating consequences. It's about a lawyer, a woman named Victoria Chen, who walked into a room full of entitled heirs and changed everything with 3 words and a single document. But I warn you, this story has moments that will make your blood boil. What happens in Chapter 7 will leave you breathless, and the ending will make you believe in justice. Stay with me until the very last word. Let's begin. Elena Martinez had never known her parents. Her earliest memory was of the St. Catherine's Home for Children in Oakland, California, a grey building with barred windows and hallways that smelled of disinfectant and despair. She remembered the narrow beds lined up in rows, the scratchy wool blankets, the sound of children crying in the night. She remembered being 4 years old and asking Sister Margaret where her mommy was. "Your mother loved you very much," the nun had said, her eyes sad. "But she couldn't take care of you. She wanted you to have a better life." It was a kind lie. Elena would learn the truth much later, that her mother had died in childbirth, alone and afraid, in a charity hospital across town, that no father had been listed on the birth certificate, that she had been surrendered to the state before she was 3 days old. Elena grew up in the system. She was moved from St. Catherine's to a series of foster homes, some kind, some cruel, none permanent. She learned early that attachment was dangerous, that love was conditional, that the only person she could truly rely on was herself. But Elena was a survivor. She was smart, brilliant actually, though no one bothered to notice. She devoured books, aiding in library corners while other children played. She taught herself subjects that weren't covered in her underfunded schools. She graduated high school at 16, earned a full scholarship to Berkeley, and put herself through law school by working 3 jobs. By 28, Elena Martinez was an associate at one of San Francisco's most prestigious law firms. She had a small apartment in the Mission District, a used Honda Civic, and a savings account that she added to religiously every month. She had built her life from nothing, brick by brick, and she was proud of what she had accomplished. But she had never stopped wondering. Who was her mother? Why had she died alone? And the question that haunted her most, who was her father? Why had he abandoned her? Was he even still alive? Elena had searched, of course. She had spent years digging through records, filing requests, hitting dead ends. Her mother's file was sparse. Maria Santos, age 19, no known relatives, cause of death listed as complications from childbirth. No father listed, no family to contact, no answers, until the day a letter arrived that changed everything. The envelope was cream-colored, expensive, with no return address. Elena found it in her mailbox on a Tuesday evening, wedged between a utility bill and a grocery store flyer. Her name was written in elegant calligraphy, not printed but handwritten, as if someone had taken great care with every letter. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a photograph. The photograph showed a young woman, maybe 18 or 19, with dark hair and Eleanor's exact eyes. She was smiling, standing in front of a large house, wearing a maid's uniform. On the back, in faded ink, someone had written, Maria, 1995. Elena's hands trembled. This was her mother. She had never seen a picture of her mother. The letter was typed, formal, unsigned. Ms. Martinez, the woman in this photograph was Maria Santos, your mother. She worked as a housekeeper for the Blackwood family from 1994 to 1996. During that time, she had a relationship with Harold Blackwood, the family patriarch. You are the result of that relationship. Harold Blackwood is dying. He has weeks to live. His legitimate children do not know you exist, and they will do everything in their power to ensure you never receive what is rightfully yours. If you want the truth, come to the reading of the will. It will be held at the Blackwood estate in Napa Valley on March 15th at 2:00 p.m. Come prepared, they will not welcome you. Eleanor read the letter 3 times. Harold Blackwood. She knew that name. Everyone knew that name. Blackwood Industries was one of the largest private companies in America. Real estate, technology, media, with a valuation in the tens of billions. Harold Blackwood was a legend, a titan of industry, a man whose face had graced the covers of Forbes and Fortune for decades. And according to this letter, he was her father. Eleanor's first instinct was disbelief. This had to be a scam, a cruel joke, some kind of elaborate fraud. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. Orphans from Oakland didn't turn out to be the secret daughters of billionaires. But the photograph, those eyes, her mother's eyes, her eyes. Elena picked up her phone and called the one person she trusted completely. Victoria, it's Elena. I need your help. Something impossible just happened. Victoria Chen was Elena's best friend from law school. They had met during their first year at Stanford, 2 women of color in a sea of privilege, both fighting to prove they belonged. They had studied together, supported each other, celebrated each other's victories, and mourned each other's defeats. When Elena had struggled to pay her tuition, Victoria had quietly covered her share of their apartment rent for 3 months, never mentioning it, never expecting repayment. Victoria was now a partner at her own firm, Chen and Associates, specializing in estate law and inheritance disputes. She was small, sharp-featured, with a mind like a steel trap and a reputation for being absolutely ruthless in the courtroom. She was also fiercely protective of Elena. "Let me get this straight," Victoria said, studying the letter and photograph in Elena's apartment. "Someone is claiming that Harold Blackwood, the Harold Blackwood, is your biological father, and they want you to show up at his will reading, uninvited, to claim an inheritance that his legitimate children don't know about." "That's what the letter says. And you believe it?" Elena looked at the photograph of her mother. "I don't know what I believe, but I have to find out. I've spent my whole life not knowing who I am, if there's even a chance this is true." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to dig into this. The Blackwood family, your mother's employment history, everything. If this is real, there will be evidence, and if it's a scam, I'll find that too." "And if it's real?" Victoria's eyes hardened. "If it's real, then you're entitled to a share of that estate, and I'm going to make damn sure you get it." Over the next 2 weeks, Victoria worked around the clock. She obtained Maria Santos's employment records from a Blackwood subsidiary. She found hospital records from Elena's birth, records that had been sealed, but that a well-placed bribe convinced a clerk to unseal. She tracked down former Blackwood employees, people who had worked at the estate in the mid-90s, people who remembered Maria, and she found something else, a DNA sample. Harold Blackwood had been involved in a paternity suit 20 years earlier. A different woman, a different claim, ultimately dismissed. But the court records included his DNA profile, filed as evidence. Victoria obtained a copy through legal channels, then arranged for Elena to be tested. The results came back 3 days before the will reading. 99, 97% probability of paternal relationship. Harold Blackwood was Elena's father. To understand what Elena was walking into, you need to understand the Blackwood family. Harold Blackwood had built his empire from nothing, or so the official story went. In reality, he had inherited a modest fortune from his father and leveraged it ruthlessly, crushing competitors, exploiting workers, and making deals that skirted the edge of legality. He was brilliant, charismatic, and utterly without conscience. He had been married 3 times. His first wife, Catherine, had given him 2 children, Richard, now 52, and Margaret, now 49, before dying of cancer in 1985. His second wife, Diane, had lasted only 4 years before fleeing with a generous divorce settlement and a lifetime of therapy bills. His third wife, Sophia, was 30 years his junior, a former model who had married him for his money and made no secret of it. Richard Blackwood was the heir apparent, a cold, calculating man who had spent his entire life preparing to take over the family empire. He ran the day-to-day operations of Blackwood Industries and considered himself entitled to everything his father had built. Margaret Blackwood Harrison had married into old money and spent her days on charity boards and country club committees. She was less overtly cruel than her brother, but equally protective of her inheritance. And then there was Sophia, the trophy wife, the gold digger, the woman who had convinced an 83-year-old man to marry her and was now counting the days until she could collect. These were the people waiting at the Blackwood estate on March 15th. These were the people who would do anything to protect their fortune. These were the people who had no idea that Elena Martinez existed. The Blackwood estate was a monument to excess. It sprawled across 200 acres of Napa Valley's most valuable land. Rolling hills covered in vineyards, a private lake stocked with fish, gardens designed by world-famous landscapers. The main house was a 30,000-square-foot mansion built in the style of a French chateau, with turrets and terraces and windows that sparkled in the California sun. Elena arrived in her Honda Civic, feeling absurdly out of place among the Bentleys and Mercedes that lined the circular driveway. She wore her best suit, a navy blue number she had bought for job interviews, and carried a leather briefcase that Victoria had lent her. Victoria walked beside her, calm and confident, as if she crashed billionaire will readings every day. "Remember," Victoria said quietly as they approached the front door, "don't let them intimidate you. Don't react to anything they say. And don't sign anything without my approval. What if they throw us out? They can try, but we have legal standing to be here. You're a potential heir, and I'm your attorney. They can bluster all they want, but they can't actually remove us without creating a legal nightmare for themselves." The door was opened by a butler, an actual butler, in an actual uniform, who looked at them with barely concealed disdain. "May I help you? Elena Martinez and Victoria Chen," Victoria said crisply. "We're here for the reading of Harold Blackwood's will." The butler's expression flickered. "I don't believe you're on the guest list." "We don't need to be on the guest list. Ms. Martinez is a legal heir to the estate. Please show us to the library, or I'll be forced to contact the probate court and explain why we were denied entry." The butler hesitated, then stepped aside. "Follow me." The library was a cavernous room lined with leather-bound books that had probably never been read. A massive fireplace dominated one wall, and above it hung a portrait of Harold Blackwood in his prime. Handsome, arrogant, with eyes that seemed to follow you around the room. The family was already assembled. Richard Blackwood stood by the fireplace, a glass of whiskey in his hand, his silver hair perfectly styled. Margaret sat in a wingback chair, her designer dress and pearl necklace screaming old money. Sophia perched on a settee, looking bored, her attention focused on her phone. And in a wheelchair near the window, wrapped in blankets despite the warm day, was Harold Blackwood himself. Elena's breath caught in her throat. He was dying. That much was obvious. His skin was grey, his body shrunken, his eyes sunken into a face that had once commanded boardrooms and terrified competitors. But those eyes were still sharp, and when they landed on Elena, something flickered in them. Recognition, fear, guilt. He knew who she was. "What is this?" Richard demanded, noticing the newcomers. "Who are these people?" "My name is Victoria Chen," Victoria said, stepping forward. "I'm an attorney, and this is my client, Elena Martinez. I don't care who you are. This is a private family matter. You need to leave." "I'm afraid we can't do that, Ms. Martinez has a legal claim to this estate." Richard laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "A legal claim? Based on what?" Victoria opened her briefcase and removed a folder. "Based on the fact that she is Harold Blackwood's biological daughter." The room went silent. Margaret's face drained of colour. Sophia looked up from her phone, suddenly interested. "And Richard?" Richard's expression shifted from confusion to fury in the span of a heartbeat. "That's impossible," he said. "My father has 2 children, me and Margaret. There is no one else." "DNA evidence suggests otherwise." Victoria handed him the test results. 97% probability of paternal relationship. Ms. Martinez is your half-sister, Mr. Blackwood, whether you like it or not. Richard barely glanced at the paper before throwing it aside. "This is fraud, a scam. You fabricated these results to extort money from a dying man." "The results are from an accredited laboratory and can be independently verified. Your father's DNA profile is a matter of public record from a previous legal proceeding. There's no fabrication here." Richard turned to his father, his voice rising. "Father, tell them this is nonsense. Tell them you don't have another child." All eyes turned to Harold Blackwood. The old man sat in his wheelchair, his gaze fixed on Eleanor. For a long moment he said nothing. Then slowly he shook his head. "I don't know this woman," he said, his voice weak but clear. "I've never seen her before in my life. She is not my daughter." Elena felt the words like a physical blow. She had prepared herself for hostility, for denial, for legal battles. But hearing it from him, from the man whose blood ran in her veins, was something else entirely. "Mr. Blackwood," Victoria said, her voice steady, "we have evidence that you had a relationship with Maria Santos, a housekeeper in your employ in 1995 and 1996. We have evidence that she became pregnant and was dismissed from your service. We have evidence that she died giving birth to your daughter, the woman standing before you now." Harold's face remained impassive. "I don't know anyone named Maria Santos." "Employment records suggest otherwise. Employment records can be forged. DNA tests can be manipulated. I know what you're doing. You found some poor girl with a passing resemblance and convinced her she's entitled to my money. It won't work." Richard stepped forward, emboldened by his father's denial. "You heard him. You have no claim here. You have no evidence that will hold up in court, and you have no family." He smiled coldly. "Now get out of my house before I have security remove you." Elena opened her mouth to respond, but Victoria placed a hand on her arm. "We'll leave," Victoria said calmly, "for now. But this isn't over, Mr. Blackwood, not by a long shot." She turned to Elena. "Come on, we have work to do." As they walked toward the door, Eleanor paused. She looked back at Harold Blackwood, at the father who had abandoned her mother, who had let her grow up alone, who was now denying her existence to protect his precious legacy. "My mother's name was Maria Santos," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "She was 19 years old when she died, giving birth to me. She was alone and afraid, and she died because you threw her away like garbage." Harold's expression flickered, just for a moment. "But it was enough. I don't know what she told you before she died. I don't know if she ever spoke my name, but I know the truth. And soon, everyone else will too." She turned and walked out, Victoria beside her, leaving the Blackwood family in stunned silence. Victoria had expected resistance. She had not expected war. Within 24 hours of the will reading, the Blackwood family had hired a team of lawyers, the most expensive, most ruthless attorneys money could buy. They filed motions to dismiss Elena's claim, motions to seal the proceedings, motions to have Victoria disbarred for frivolous litigation. They hired private investigators to dig into Elena's past, looking for anything that could be used to discredit her. They planted stories in the press, anonymous sources suggesting that Elena was a con artist, a gold digger, a fraud. They offered her money to go away, first $100,000, then $500,000, then $1 million. Elena refused every offer. "They're scared," Victoria said, reviewing the latest round of legal filings. "They wouldn't be fighting this hard if they didn't know you were telling the truth." "But how do we prove it? My father denied everything. The DNA evidence isn't enough." "DNA proves biological relationship. It doesn't prove that you're entitled to inherit. Under California law, you'd need to establish that Harold acknowledged you as his child, or that he supported you financially, or that there's clear evidence of his intent to include you in his estate, none of which we have." "Not yet," Victoria smiled, "but I've been doing some digging, and I've found something interesting." She pulled out a folder and spread its contents on the table. "These are financial records from 1996, the year you were born. Harold Blackwood made a series of payments to a woman named Maria Santos, monthly payments deposited into a bank account in Oakland. The payment started in January 1996 and continued until October of that year." "October? But I was born in September." "Exactly. The payments stopped the month after you were born, the month your mother died." Elena stared at the records. "He was supporting her. He knew about me." "It gets better. I tracked down the account. It was closed after your mother's death, but the bank kept records. And look at this." She pointed to a line item, a single large payment made in August 1996, 1 month before you were born, $200,000. "What was it for? I don't know yet, but I have a theory." Victoria's eyes were bright with the thrill of the chase. "I think Harold Blackwood paid your mother to disappear, to have the baby quietly, to never contact him again, to never tell anyone who the father was. I think he was trying to buy his way out of responsibility. But she died, and the money. The money went into the account and was never touched. Your mother died before she could use it, and when she died, the account was frozen, then eventually closed by the state. The funds were absorbed into the general treasury." Elena felt sick. Her father had paid her mother $200,000 to go away, and then, when she died, he had simply moved on, forgotten about her, forgotten about the child she had been carrying. "There's more," Victoria said. "I found a witness, a woman named Rosa Delgado. She worked at the Blackwood estate at the same time as your mother. She's 73 now, living in a nursing home in Sacramento, and she remembers everything." Rosa Delgado had been a cook at the Blackwood estate for 15 years. She was a small woman, frail with age, but her mind was sharp and her memory was clear. When Victoria and Elena visited her at the nursing home, she took one look at Elena and burst into tears. "Maria's daughter," she whispered. "I would know those eyes anywhere. You look just like her." Elena knelt beside Rosa's wheelchair, taking her weathered hands. "You knew my mother?" "Knew her? I loved her like a sister. She was so young, so innocent. She came to work at the estate when she was just 18. She had no family, no one to protect her. I tried to look out for her, but—" Rosa's voice trailed off, her eyes distant with memory. "But what?" "But Mr. Blackwood noticed her. He always noticed the pretty ones. And Maria was beautiful, so beautiful. She didn't stand a chance." Rosa told them everything. She told them how Harold had pursued Maria, the gifts, the attention, the promises, how Maria had believed him when he said he loved her, when he said he would take care of her, when he said she was special. She told them how Maria had become pregnant, and how everything had changed, how Harold had turned cold, distant, cruel, how he had offered her money to take care of the problem, and how Maria had refused. She told them about the night Maria was fired, thrown out of the estate with nothing but the clothes on her back, threatened with deportation if she ever spoke about what had happened. How Rosa had tried to help her, had given her money, had found her a place to stay, and she told them about the letter. Maria wrote to him, Rosa said, after she was fired. She wrote to tell him she was keeping the baby, that she didn't want his money, that she just wanted him to acknowledge his child. She asked me to deliver it. Did you? Rosa nodded, tears streaming down her face. I gave it to him myself. I watched him read it. And do you know what he did? Elena shook her head. He laughed. He laughed and threw it in the fire. And he told me that if I ever mentioned Maria's name again, I would be fired too. Victoria leaned forward. Rosa, do you remember what the letter said? The exact words? I remember everything. Maria read it to me before she sealed it. She said, I am carrying your child. I don't want your money or your name. I only want you to know that your daughter will exist, and that I will love her enough for both of us. Elena closed her eyes, overwhelmed. Her mother had loved her, had wanted her, had fought for her, even knowing she would lose. There's something else, Rosa said, something I've kept all these years. She reached into the drawer of her bedside table and pulled out a faded envelope. Maria gave this to me the last time I saw her. She was 8 months pregnant and she knew something was wrong. She made me promise to keep it safe, to give it to her child if anything happened to her. Elena took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a letter and a photograph. The photograph showed Maria Santos, heavily pregnant, standing in front of a small apartment. She was smiling, one hand resting on her belly. The letter was addressed to my darling daughter. Elena couldn't read it. Not yet, not here. She folded it carefully and placed it in her pocket, saving it for later, for a private moment when she could grieve properly. Thank you, she whispered to Rosa. Thank you for keeping this. Thank you for remembering her. Rosa squeezed her hand. Your mother was the bravest person I ever knew. She deserved so much better than what she got, and so do you. 2 weeks later, Harold Blackwood died. The news made headlines around the world. The passing of a titan, the end of an era, the beginning of a succession battle that would determine the future of a multi-billion-dollar empire. The official will reading was scheduled for the following week at the offices of Blackwood Industries' corporate attorneys. The family had tried to exclude Elena, but Victoria had obtained a court order requiring her presence. This time, Elena was ready. She arrived at the law firm's downtown San Francisco office, flanked by Victoria and 2 associates. She wore a black dress, simple, elegant, appropriate for mourning a father she had never known. Her mother's letter was in her pocket, close to her heart. The conference room was enormous, dominated by a mahogany table that could seat 30. The Blackwood family was already there. Richard looking smug, Margaret looking nervous, Sophia looking bored. A team of lawyers surrounded them like a protective wall. At the head of the table sat the executor of the estate, a senior partner named William Hartley, who had served the Blackwood family for 40 years. Before we begin, Hartley said, I must address the matter of Ms. Martinez's presence. The family has contested her claim to be an heir until that matter is resolved. The matter is resolved, Victoria interrupted. We have DNA evidence, financial records, and witness testimony establishing that Elena Martinez is the biological daughter of Harold Blackwood. We have filed the appropriate documentation with the probate court. Ms. Martinez has every legal right to be here." Richard slammed his hand on the table. "This is absurd. My father denied knowing this woman. His word should be enough." "Your father's word is not evidence. Mr. Blackwood, DNA is evidence. Bank records are evidence. The testimony of Rosa Delgado, who witnessed your father's relationship with Maria Santos, is evidence. Rosa Delgado is a senile old woman who will say anything for money. Rosa Delgado is a 73-year-old woman with a perfect memory and no financial interest in this case. She has agreed to testify under oath. Can you say the same for your witnesses?" The room fell silent. Hartley cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should proceed with the reading of the will. The court can sort out the inheritance claims afterward." He opened a leather folder and began to read. The will was long and complex, filled with legal jargon and specific bequests. The bulk of the estate, the company, the properties, the investments was divided between Richard and Margaret, with smaller amounts going to Sophia and various charities. Elena's name was not mentioned. "As you can see," Richard said, smiling triumphantly, "my father made no provision for Ms. Martinez, because she is not his daughter, because he never acknowledged her, because this entire charade is a fraud." Victoria remained calm. "Mr. Hartley, when was this will drafted?" Hartley checked the document. "March 2020, 4 years ago. And has Mr. Blackwood made any amendments or codicils since then?" Hartley hesitated. "There is one additional document. It was delivered to our office last week, shortly before Mr. Blackwood's death." Richard's smile faltered. "What document? I wasn't informed of any document." "It was delivered privately, with instructions that it be read at the will reading." Hartley pulled out a sealed envelope. "I have not yet reviewed its contents." He broke the seal and unfolded the paper inside. As he read, his face went pale. "What is it?" Richard demanded. "What does it say?" Hartley looked up, his eyes moving from Richard to Elena. "It's a codicil to the will, signed and witnessed 3 days before Mr. Blackwood's death." He took a deep breath. "It acknowledges Elena Martinez as Harold Blackwood's biological daughter and legitimate heir, and it leaves her 50% of the estate." The room exploded. Richard was on his feet, screaming, "This is fraud, forgery. My father would never. He told us he didn't know her. He denied everything." "The signature has been verified," Hartley said, his voice shaking. "The witnesses are 2 nurses from the hospice facility where Mr. Blackwood spent his final days. They have confirmed that he was of sound mind when he signed." "He was dying. He was on medication. He didn't know what he was doing." "The witnesses disagree. They say he was lucid. They say he specifically asked for this document to be prepared. They say he—" Hartley paused, reading further. "They say he cried when he signed it." Margaret spoke for the first time, her voice barely a whisper. "Why? Why would he do this?" Hartley turned the page. "There's a letter attached, addressed to Ms. Martinez. Mr. Blackwood requested that it be read aloud." He looked at Elena. "May I?" Elena nodded, unable to speak. Hartley began to read. "To my daughter Elena, I am writing this letter knowing that I will be dead when you read it. I am a coward. I have always been a coward. And this letter is my final act of cowardice, telling you the truth only when I am no longer alive to face the consequences. Your mother was the only woman I ever truly loved. I know that sounds impossible given what I did to her, but it's true. Maria was kind and gentle and good, everything I was not. When I was with her, I felt like a better man, like the man I might have been, if I had made different choices. But I was weak. I was afraid of what my family would say, what my business partners would think, what the world would do if they knew that Harold Blackwood had fallen in love with a housekeeper. So I pushed her away. I told myself it was for the best. I told myself she would be fine. When she told me she was pregnant, I panicked. I offered her money to end the pregnancy. When she refused, I offered her money to disappear. She took the money, not for herself, but for you. She wanted to give you a good life, even if I wouldn't be part of it. And then she died, and I told myself it wasn't my fault. I told myself I had done everything I could. I told myself that you were better off without me. I was lying. I have been lying for 30 years. I knew where you were. I had people watching you. From a distance, always from a distance. I saw you grow up in foster homes. I saw you struggle. I saw you fight for everything you achieved. And I did nothing because I was afraid, because I was ashamed, because I was a coward. I am dying now, and I find that I am still afraid. But I am more afraid of dying without telling you the truth than I am of anything my family might do. You are my daughter. You have always been my daughter. And I am sorry, more sorry than words can express, for the life I stole from you. I cannot give you back your mother. I cannot give you back the childhood you deserved, but I can give you what I have left. My money, my name, my acknowledgement that you exist and that you matter. I don't expect your forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I hope that someday you will understand that even cowards can feel regret, even monsters can feel love. Your father, Harold Blackwood. The room was silent. Elena sat frozen, tears streaming down her face. Victoria placed a hand on her shoulder, steady and supportive. Richard's face had gone from red to white to a strange shade of grey. Margaret was crying quietly. Even Sophia looked shaken. "This changes nothing," Richard said finally, but his voice had lost its conviction. "We'll contest this. We'll prove he was incompetent. You'll lose," Victoria said quietly. "You'll spend years in court, millions in legal fees, and you'll lose. Because the evidence is overwhelming, because your father acknowledged Elena in writing with witnesses while of sound mind, because the truth is finally out." She stood, gathering her papers. "My client is willing to negotiate a settlement. She doesn't want to destroy your family or your company. She just wants what she's entitled to. Recognition as Harold Blackwood's daughter and a fair share of his estate." She looked at Richard, then at Margaret, then at the army of lawyers surrounding them. "You have 1 week to respond. After that, we go to court, and I promise you, everything will become public. Every secret your father kept, every lie your family told, everything." She turned to Elena. "Come on, we're done here." The negotiations took 3 months. Richard fought every step of the way, contesting every document, challenging every witness, filing motion after motion in a desperate attempt to invalidate his father's final wishes. But the evidence was too strong, the witnesses too credible, the DNA too conclusive. In the end, the Blackwood family settled. Elena received 40% of the estate, slightly less than the 50% Harold had specified, but still a fortune beyond anything she had ever imagined. She received shares in Blackwood Industries, properties in California and New York, investment accounts worth hundreds of millions. She also received something money couldn't buy, official recognition as Harold Blackwood's daughter. Her name was added to the family records. Her mother's name was cleared. The truth, after 30 years, was finally acknowledged. But Elena didn't care about the money. What she cared about was the letter her mother had written. The letter Rosa had kept for 3 decades, waiting for the daughter who would someday come to claim it. She read it alone, in her apartment, on the night the settlement was finalized. "My darling daughter," it began. "If you are reading this, then I am gone, and you have grown up without me. I'm so sorry. I wanted to be there for you. I wanted to watch you take your first steps, say your first words, become the woman I know you will be. But life doesn't always give us what we want. Sometimes it gives us what we need. I need you to know that you were wanted. You were loved. From the moment I knew you existed, you were the most important thing in my world. Your father is a complicated man. He is not evil, but he is weak. He let fear control him, and fear made him do terrible things. I don't know if he will ever acknowledge you. I don't know if you will ever meet him. But I want you to know that his weakness is not your inheritance. You come from me, and I am strong. I grew up with nothing. I came to this country with nothing. I worked and I fought and I survived. And when I found out I was pregnant with you, I was not afraid. I was grateful, because you gave me something to live for, something to fight for, something to love. Whatever happens, wherever you go, whoever you become, remember that you are loved. Remember that you are strong. Remember that you are my daughter, and nothing can ever take that away. I will be watching over you, my darling, always. With all my love, your mother, Maria. Elena held the letter to her chest and wept. 1 year later, Elena stood in front of a building in Oakland. It was a community center, brand new, state-of-the-art, built on the site of the old St. Catherine's Home for Children. The home had been demolished years ago, replaced by a parking lot, then by nothing at all. The land had sat empty, forgotten, like the children who had once lived there. Until Elena bought it. The Maria Santos Community Center was her gift to the neighborhood that had raised her. It housed after-school programs, job training services, legal aid clinics, and a foster care support network. It was staffed by people who had grown up in the system, who understood what these children needed, who were determined to give them the chances they had never had. Elena had used her inheritance to fund it. Not all of it. She had kept enough to live comfortably, to never worry about money again. But most of it, because money meant nothing if it didn't help people. Because her mother had taught her that strength meant lifting others up. Victoria stood beside her as the ribbon was cut, as the crowd cheered, as children poured into the building that would change their lives. "Your mother would be proud," Victoria said. Elena smiled, tears in her eyes. "I hope so." "She would. Trust me." Victoria squeezed her hand. "You've done something amazing here. Something that will matter long after we're gone." Elena looked at the building, at the children playing in the courtyard, at the families gathering for the opening celebration, at the sign above the door bearing her mother's name. "I spent my whole life feeling like I didn't belong anywhere," she said, "like I didn't have a family, like I was alone in the world." She turned to Victoria. "But I was wrong. Family isn't about blood. It's about the people who show up for you, the people who fight for you, the people who love you not because they have to, but because they choose to." She looked back at the community center, at the legacy she was building. "My mother chose to love me. Rosa chose to remember me. You chose to fight for me. And now I'm choosing to love these kids, to give them what I never had. A place to belong, a family." Victoria smiled. "That's the best kind of inheritance." Elena nodded. "It's the only kind that matters." 5 years later, Elena received an unexpected visitor. She was in her office at the community center, reviewing grant applications, when her assistant knocked on the door. "There's someone here to see you. She says her name is Margaret Blackwood Harrison." Elena froze. She hadn't spoken to any of the Blackwoods since the settlement. Richard had died 2 years ago, a heart attack brought on by stress and bitterness. Sophia had remarried and moved to Europe. Margaret had retreated into her charity work, rarely appearing in public. "Send her in." Margaret entered slowly, looking older than her 54 years. She was elegantly dressed, as always, but there was something different about her, a softness in her eyes that Elena had never seen before. "Thank you for seeing me," Margaret said. "I wasn't sure you would." I wasn't sure either. Elena gestured to a chair. Please, sit down. Margaret sat, her hands folded in her lap. I've been following what you've done here, she said. The community center, the scholarships, the foster care programs. It's remarkable. Thank you. I came to apologize. Margaret's voice trembled. For how we treated you, for what we said, for trying to deny you your birthright. Elena was quiet for a moment. Why now? It's been 5 years. Because I've been thinking about my father, about the man he was and the man he could have been, about the choices he made and the choices I made. She looked up, meeting Elena's eyes. I was so angry when you appeared. I thought you were trying to steal what was ours. I didn't stop to think about what had been stolen from you, your mother, your childhood, your father. He was never really my father, not in any way that mattered. No, but he could have been, if he had been braver, if we had been kinder. Margaret wiped her eyes. I can't change the past, but I can try to do better. That's why I'm here. She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. This is a check, a donation to the Maria Santos Community Center. It's not much, not compared to what you've already done, but I wanted to contribute. I wanted to honor your mother's memory. Elena took the envelope but didn't open it. Why? Because she deserved better. Because you deserved better. And because my father, in his own broken way, loved her. I think he would want me to do this. Elena looked at the envelope, then at Margaret. I don't need your money. I know, but maybe I need to give it. Maybe I need to do something good for once in my life. Something that isn't about protecting my family's reputation or preserving my inheritance. Something that actually matters. Elena studied her half-sister, this woman she had hated, feared, resented for so long. And she saw something she hadn't expected. Regret. Genuine regret. Okay, Elena said finally. I'll accept your donation. On one condition. Anything. Come back. Not just to write checks, to actually help. We need volunteers, people to mentor kids, to teach classes, to show up and be present. If you really want to honor my mother's memory, do it with your time, not just your money. Margaret's eyes widened. You would want me here, after everything? I want anyone who's willing to help. That's what this place is about. Second chances, new beginnings, becoming the person you were meant to be. She stood and extended her hand. What do you say, Margaret? Are you ready to be part of this family? Margaret stared at her hand for a long moment. Then slowly she reached out and took it. Yes, she whispered. I think I am. You have no family. 4 words spoken by a man who thought he could define who belonged and who didn't, who thought that blood and money were the only things that mattered, who thought he could erase a person's existence with a single sentence. But he was wrong. Elena Martinez had a family, not the family she was born into. That family had failed her, abandoned her, denied her very existence, but the family she built, the family she chose, the family that chose her. Victoria Chen, who fought for her when no one else would. Rosa Delgado, who kept her mother's memory alive for 30 years. The children at the community center who called her Miss Elena and hugged her when she walked through the door. And yes, even Margaret Blackwood Harrison, who learned that it's never too late to become a better person. Harold Blackwood died with regrets. He died knowing that he had wasted his life on fear and cowardice, that he had thrown away the only woman he ever loved, that he had abandoned his own daughter to a life of hardship and loneliness. But his regret came too late to save him. It came too late to give Eleanor the childhood she deserved, the father she needed, the family she had always wanted. What it did give her was the truth, and the truth set her free. What would you do if someone told you that you don't belong? What would you do if the people who were supposed to love you turned their backs? Would you accept their judgment? Would you let them define you? Or would you build your own family, your own legacy, your own truth? Elena Martinez answered that question in a conference room full of hostile strangers, with a lawyer by her side and her mother's letter in her pocket. She proved that family isn't about blood, it's about love. She proved that belonging isn't something others give you, it's something you create. She proved that the people who try to erase you only make you stronger. If this story moved you, drop a comment telling me what moment hit you the hardest. Was it Maria's letter? Harold's confession? Margaret's redemption? I want to hear from you. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. We tell stories like this every week. Stories about ordinary people who refuse to let others define them. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's been told they don't belong. Someone who's searching for their family. Someone who needs to know that it's never too late to find where you fit. Tell them Elena's story. Tell them that family is what you make it, because the people who say you have no family are always wrong. Always. Thank you for watching. Thank you for believing. Thank you for being here. Until next time.